Hey guys, welcome back to today's episode. Today's going to be a little bit of a heavier one, and I'm really pumped to tackle this topic with my friend Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
Hey, Whitney, it's my absolute pleasure to be here.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to. So, last time you were on the show was probably about a year and a half ago. And so, we talked about entirely different stuff. And we, of course, even touched on life insurance scams and all of that fun thing, too. But I'm curious, like, what have you been up to, man?
Been a big year and a half. I don't know the exact date I was on last, but I think that in the last year and a half, I got married, bought a house, had a baby, all firsts for me. Well, the house, I guess, is a second. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I went from being this like kind of older for being a single guy to newlywed. Am I newlywed? And
Yeah.
I mean, we both have babies that are just a few weeks apart from each other in age. And so
So crazy.
we both will have trouble recalling words during this episode as
No one's sleeping.
sleep deprivation is really terrible for your vocabulary. I think the
I
word
think
I
so.
could just had trouble thinking of.
I love that you are in the same boat too, because I think that means our mindsets are probably on similar topics lately. And so one of the things that you had recently posted about was you shared this on Instagram and you called this thing a dead box. And I was so fascinated with it because one, I personally was interested in that. And second, I saw how many comments and how many people were like, whoa, I need this. I haven't thought about this before. So tell us from your perspective, like, what is a dead box and how did you even come to creating this?
A dead box. I think I might have stolen this name from like a friend's mom who would
Mm,
put stuff in a box for her for when she dies. And
mm,
so she says, "Hey, if you want like the family photos when I die, it's in the dead box." And the way I use the term dead box is it's basically the centerpiece, the linchpin to your estate plan. And I hate the term estate planning because estate planning confuses people.
yeah, it does.
Do you have an estate? What is that, like a big hill in France, my estate with wine or something, and a plan for it, and they think it's all about like evading taxes through some Swiss bank account. Like that's my estate plan, but none of that's true. What your estate plan is really is just basically a plan for getting all of your stuff to your loved ones when you die. And let's say you were to die unexpectedly today. I hope you don't. I hope none of us do. But the sad reality is we're all going to die one day.
Mhm.
Would your loved ones know? Do you have life insurance? Where is the title to your car? What's the password to your bank accounts? Did you have an old investment with an old retirement plan with an old employer? You can see how the stuff that just is rattling around your brain can be extremely difficult to track for even your spouse. And so that's where enters a dead box. A dead box is a physical or digital folder where you keep all of the documents and information that basically organize your financial life.
Mm.
And you share this information with your loved ones, the executor of your will, your beneficiaries, basically whoever is going to deal with this when you die. Someone's going to basically be picking up the pieces to your life when you die.
Mhm.
And this is a incredibly loving and caring gift that you give them, saying, "Hey, I've organized my, can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah, for sure.
I've organized my shit so you don't have to sift through it." And at least giving you like a really, really good head start. Because a lot of times when someone's dad dies, along with the grieving, they
Hmm.
have to figure out, did dad have life insurance? Where is his bank account? I think I remember him banking with Bank of America. Do we call him? And then it just becomes this like forensic investigation of his finances when he could have just given them the list right there of all of it. So that's what a dead box is. It's a very simple in concept, just a place to put all of your stuff so that if you were to unexpectedly die,
Hmm.
your loved ones can get access to it and know basically where to start the process of giving divvying up the money the way you
Hmm.
want it. Your wills and your trust in there, and I think we'll go into that.
We definitely will. I'm curious too because I know when I was in my 20s, I had some assets, but not really that much, and I don't feel like I had a ton on the line at that time. So I know when I was younger, I used to think this wasn't even something I have to worry about was like estate planning and this kind of stuff. When, from your perspective, like when should we actually be thinking about this? And when did you start to put this stuff in place for yourself too?
That's a good point because when you're 20, you're like, oh, if I die, what are they going to take the two
Take
bucks
my
in my
student
pocket?
loans, do it.
Yeah, I know exactly. But that said, I still think there's stuff in your life,
Hmm.
like your car. Where is the title to your car? Like someone's got to deal with that. Your pet. Who do you want to take care of your pet? Do you have
It's
like
true.
medical directives? If you are in a coma, do you want to be kept alive? That's a decision that you're going to have to make in your 20s if you have some sort of horrific accident. And so even if there's not, a multi-million dollar financial estate at stake, I still think another great one is um, what photos do you want shown at your funeral? What music do you want played?
Oh, that is
It's
such a good point.
things like that where are you going to burden your friends with that decision, or are you going to like give them a heads up and a head start, or are you going to have ugly photos shown at your
I was gonna say
funeral?
I'm not giving my
Um,
sister that responsibility.
right. And so there's all sorts of things like that that can go in a dead box. That again, it's like a loving. You don't have to. You could be a dick to your family and be like, "Yo, I'm living on the edge, and just you clean up the mess when I'm dead." But it's really a loving gift you're giving to your family, your beneficiaries, your loved ones, so that they can see your wishes out and save them headache, heartache, and probably a lot of lost money because
Yeah.
so much money is lost in these like transitions of death when people don't even know about accounts that used to exist.
Hmm.
So
So,
I say everyone, yeah.
I mean, I kind of agree with you too. And I think anytime you have anything, even if you don't have like a ton of assets, you can still, like you said, you can still give them directions. You should still have, like, at the very least, the medical directives. That one's so big, and there
Mhm.
can be a shit show that happens if you don't have that stuff. And so I do think at the very least having that is not going to hurt you. For you personally, okay, so we create all these documents. We're going to talk about what to put in there for sure. But I'm curious, like, how often do you start to revisit your dead box? Is this like a yearly thing? Is it once in a lifetime? Like, what's your thought process there?
That's a great question because your dead box is only as good as it is up to date.
Yeah.
And so let's say I make a careful auditing of every single account to my name. Here's where I hide my keys.
Mm-hmm.
Here's where the insurance policies are. And then time ticks on and I switch banks. I move. I get married. I get divorced. I change cars. You can just see as time ticks on, this stuff changes a lot.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And, it doesn't change every day. So for me, what I do is in January, I have a big old calendar event that says, "Hey, I can actually read it to you right now. I'm going to open up my actual calendar
Sweet.
because
Let's do it.
it was yesterday. It
Oh,
says
congratulations.
it says update my dead box and email Andrea, my wife,
Uh-huh.
reminding her where to find it." And so I give instructions to myself to basically say, "Hey, this is what you
Mm,
need to do. Go update your net worth statement. Go update, go through and do
mm.
all these things." And I do it once a year. And for sure in December I might have changed banks or something like that, and like that will be out of date. But the point isn't to be super. We call it a dead box, but you don't want to really be thinking about your dead box every single day necessarily. But I think
No.
once a year is a good pace. So like New Year, spring cleaning, get it all updated, and then I email her. Right, a dead box is only as good as it is up to date, and a dead box is only as good as it is the awareness of your
Hmm.
your your loved ones, right? And so actually my wife and my brother both get an annual email saying, "Hey, if I die, here's the link. This is where it is. You can look at it now if you want." I implicitly trust my wife and my brother, so I give it to them access. If you don't, you will need to figure out a way to have a password that gets given to them upon your death or something. There's ways that we can talk about how you do that, but they have access. And then I send to them every single year, and they're probably sick of getting this email, although it's probably preferable to the other outcome, which is me being dead.
For sure.
But um, but the point is, like, let's say I didn't email to him, and then 7 years go by, which I think you're younger than me, but we're not spring chickens anymore. We're not like we're 20. Um, 7 years can go by like that these days, and all of a sudden my wife's gonna be like, "Oh, I think I remember him saying something about Dead Box years ago,
Hmm.
where like I lost that email, I switched email accounts, whatever." So I think once a year is enough to be like recent enough in memory, recent enough in email inboxes that they can find how to find the Dead
True.
Box.
Very true. And are you doing this? Is yours all virtual? I believe it is, right?
I do, so my will and trust, there's a physical aspect. So I do have like a
Yeah.
physical location that I'm referenced, but mine happens in Google Drive.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people say, yo, security. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But, you want to keep your drive very secure.
Hmm.
And if you just don't trust anything on the internet and you want to do it physically, go for it. But as soon as something is on the internet, you have security to worry about. And I would posit that anyone who has a bank already has this problem, right? They're getting emails from their bank. They're getting, emails from their credit card. They're getting emails from about their insurance. And if someone hacked your email, they
Hmm.
could go fill out a lost password form at your bank and get into your bank and wire money, whatever. And so the existence of the dead box doesn't introduce a cybersecurity issue. We all have an ongoing cybersecurity issue. It might make it slightly more convenient for a hacker to like look through things in one location,
Hmm.
but I don't think this hackers already are going to be hacking.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah,
Hackers be hacking. That's
yeah.
that's like the pull quote here. I'm curious now, let's dive into like the contents of this. So what specifically do you personally include?
So it's the keys to everything to untangle your financial life, plus other things that your parent or your family wants upon your death. So just to
Yeah.
go through a few of them. One, I write a letter to my family. So it's a letter that's like a couple pages long. I've introduced my own humor, so I make jokes at the top of it, and then the letter. And by the way, I have kind of like a template for all this stuff that tells you how to write your letter and
Yes.
gives you a basic version, but it kind of says things like, "I'm sorry, I'm dead. Here's where my physical documents are. Here's the contact information for my best friends who are going to help sort
Oh,
this out.
cool.
Here's the contact information for my lawyer. Here's
Yeah.
where my will and trust is. The will and trust is like the legal portion of your dead box. The dead box is like the organization piece. The
Hmm.
will and trust is the legal piece that says, the will says things like, who do I want to get to my stuff?
Hmm.
What are those medical directives? Where are those things? Organ donation instructions, pet
Hmm.
care instructions, cars, real estate, insurance, all this stuff, like this high level stuff can go in your dead box or in your letter.
Hmm.
Then all the associated files go in that same folder. And so if you have something that says, hey, I own a um, vacation home in Big Bear, California, you're going to find the deed and the mortgage info. Those
Yeah.
are files in the dead box. So that's the letter. Also in your dead box goes a net worth statement. A net worth statement is a list of every single one of your assets,
Hmm.
checking, savings, investment, car, all the stuff that has positive financial value, and a list of all of your debts,
Hmm.
mortgage, credit cards, student loans, because your executor is going to have to pay off your debts um, from your estate.
Yeah.
Again, I don't really love that word, but that's what the name of all of your stuff is. And so instead of, again, making your family go on a CSI financial forensics challenge to go track
Hmm.
the stuff down,
Yeah.
make a spreadsheet. Like, what a gift you can give them, right?
Truly.
Um, and then also in your box, cars, bank statements, birth certificates. A lot of
Mm,
times when you
that's a
need
good
to
one.
prove ownership of accounts, like upon a death, you're gonna have to go to the bank or to the investment brokerage and bring their birth certificate, their death certificate, prove that you like are now able to take over this account. Um, Business ownership documents, debts, insurance, marriage certificate, divorce decree,
Yeah.
domestic partnership. Again, these things are going to come up if you need to prove your divorce so that they're not looking for the spouse when you're trying to take over this
Yeah.
investment account. Have it in your dead box. Passport, real estate, recovery codes. I put my
Mm.
recovery codes in there. That the recovery codes are like those codes you can use to get access. You don't necessarily need those.
Oh, I
If you
see.
have the death certificate, you can go to the bank and get access another way. But sometimes it's nice if you just want to be able to let your loved ones log in. Um, Retirement plans, taxes, will, trust, organ donation. I'm going through a lot, but you can see there is a lot.
There is a
Um,
ton, yeah.
and this is all in like the template that
Yep.
that we provide. And funeral multimedia, photos, song lists, etc. for your wishes. And yeah, I think just anything that you can basically provide to make life easy on your loved ones so they don't have to figure it out.
No, it's true. And I love to the earlier you mentioned that this is like a gift to your loved ones. And it's so true. I think the older you get, the more stuff you start to see where people didn't have this in order. And it is such a mess where it's like your loved ones should just be grieving and, being bummed out, hopefully. I mean, let's pray
Yeah,
that they are,
exactly.
right? But
Let them focus
instead,
on the actual sad part, you know?
yeah, but instead they're like digging through all of the crap. And yeah, it can get really messy when somebody gets the template. So you've got everything very cleanly packaged here, and I love that. So if people do want to purchase a copy of this, it can be themoneynerds.com/deadbox. Super easy. They can go through, collect all of the information for themselves. I can suspect that two things come up when people start to go through the process. One, avoidance. We're like, oh God, I got to think about all this stuff. Like, this is scary. It's overwhelming. I don't want to think about my death. So, that's one thing that can come up. And then the second one is having these tough conversations where you're starting to bring people into it of like, hey, I would prefer you to be my executor of my estate. When we start with the conversation first, let's start with the easier, maybe easier part of having the conversation with loved ones. Do you have any like tips for navigating that? Because I can imagine that can be kind of sensitive.
Yeah, I think a lot of that fear comes from the unknown. You know, it's like the monster that you know lurks out there. When
Yeah,
you look the monster in the eye, it becomes less scary.
true.
And so I think when you start to write this stuff down and you put the files in there and you make the net worth statement and you write the letter, suddenly this unknown monster that's like lurking in the shadows of unknown size isn't actually that big and isn't that scary. And so I think that, and you know, I'm not one for euphemisms, so we call it dead box because some people call it a legacy box or a estate journey box or something like that. But I just think it's it gets people's attention.
It
And
does.
in my experience, people are thankful. You know, they know that it's a gift to them. And so if you go and say, it depends who your executor is, right? If you're married, it's probably going to be your spouse, but you probably have a backup too in case you and your spouse die together. So for me, it's my wife and my brother. If you're young, it might be your parents or a friend.
Right.
And so depending on your relationship, you might have to navigate it differently. But just be honest and say, hey, I'm not dying. If you're not dying, if you are dying, then this is going to be a little bit less of a shock to them.
Hmm.
If you have some sort of illness or something, I hope to live a very long time, but just so you know, I'm organizing my
Hmm.
affairs in this way. I hope to not have to do this for a very, very long time. Are you okay with being the executor of my will? And maybe they have some questions. Maybe you have some questions. What that means generally just means the person who has to, be in charge of this stuff and kind of head up taking this over. And any executor is going to, hold their hands up to the sky and praise someone who maybe doesn't exist if you died, but but be very thankful that they have a dead box to work off of, because then there's like kind of instructions laid out for them rather than just this like obligation of unknown.
Oh
you
yeah,
know
like the Godspeed strategy, like that sucks. Nobody
yeah,
likes that. That's really
right.
stressful. Okay, so that's maybe just a little bit easier, just delicate, telling people, hey, here, I would prefer this. This is, pretty clean cut. What about for the person who starts to feel like, oh my God, I don't want to think about this. The avoidance creeps in. Do you have any people in your life that maybe have experienced that?
you know I don't think anyone, unless you're ill, I don't think many people really think they're going to die. And so
Right.
I found that a lot of it's one of those things when you look at the lists of what people are most afraid of, death is like far below public speaking,
Which is so
and
weird to me.
right. And so I think that the death aspect of this, at least in my experience, scares people a lot less than the financial aspect.
Mm,
And I think, and the audience that can hear our voice now are, money nerd listeners or money nerds listeners. And so I think that probably impacts them less than the average person,
I agree.
because if you've made it as far as listening to like great finance podcasts, then you've already looked that monster in the eye to some degree.
Hmm.
I think more people are scared who like, I don't even want to know how much debt I have. I don't even, like I'm not even comfortable with my bills, and I don't want to know. Like, those are the people who this is going to be terrifying for,
For sure.
because like they can't even go through their affairs, much less someone else trying to do it on your behalf. Um, but but my general advice is, dude, it's so much less scary once you get started. The fear is the unknown. And so, take that checklist, start with your net worth statement, list all your assets. Even I think if you go ask a random person in somewhere in America what their net worth is, they're much less likely to know that than their credit score, for example.
Agreed.
People don't even know what their net worth is. And that's so much more important because a credit score is just a bank's opinion of how much money they can make off of you. Your net worth is like how much money you actually have. That's like the key. And so people don't even know. But in reality, you probably have a handful of accounts, a few debts. Like this whole spreadsheet might be 10 or 15 lines long. If you're young, it might be 3 lines long. And then once you put it down on paper, you're like, oh, okay, I have a positive net worth, or I have a negative net worth, or at least there it is. Now I know what it is. True. Now I can, it just becomes less scary because now you know what you're up against.
That's so true. I think it's, one day at a time, one step at a time. And also my general advice to people is it is scary, but don't drag this out either. Like that's like one of the worst things you can do is just feel so scared and just put your head in the sand and not get this stuff done. At the very least, take a stab at all of it and see, okay, here's my first draft. Here's what I'm thinking. But man, it is something that you don't want to drag out, especially those medical directives too. That's a big one.
Yeah. And, again, as young people, we hope to not need it, but it's just one of those things you can't necessarily wait until you need it because you might already be incapacitated if you have like an accident or something. And so it just has to be one of these things that you just have to do on a random Tuesday when no one's asking you to do it. But
so true.
Whenever I think about my finances, I feel much better having a dead box because my wife's like, oh yeah, aren't you in that real estate thing? I was like, it's in the dead box. Go look at it whenever you want.
Go check it out.
There's no secrets. It's all there. Because rather than being like, oh yeah, I've got 50 things rattling around my brain in 50 different ways. I don't really know where they all are. Once they're on one place, it's much more in a live box for me because I'm constantly referring to it rather than, the value it provides when I die one day.
How often are you updating the pictures in there? Is that yearly as well?
To be totally honest, the pictures were like a great recommendation from
I love it.
A follower. I don't even know if I have pictures in mine.
Oh, you got to. You got to get your playlist going.
Yeah,
get it all put together.
I don't really care much about that stuff. So for me, like, I don't, maybe that's not.
No, that's like your last jab at humor, man. Like, I think it could be great.
That's a good point. If I can be funny about it, put some really funny pictures. Okay.
Oh, absolutely. Because, I think that is a really good tip. The other tip that I wanted to, or at least dive into, at least so people can understand how to protect it, is you did touch on, the falsehood of maybe cybersecurity where we all think we're really safe, but truly maybe we're not as safe as we think. So don't let that stop you. But there is an element of like protection. So what do we do to protect that?
Yeah, you basically have to do the general best practices of security.
Yeah.
And to understand that, I think it's important to understand how things get hacked. And I'm going to give you a few examples. And sometimes I'm talking about things I don't know about. But I actually have a master's in computer science, so I have a little bit of actual real knowledge on this topic. And so that's where this is coming from. And so I think when people think about hackers, they think someone in a basement in Russia just cracks their fingertips and opens up a terminal window and just types and cracks the code somehow and gets in. And that's not true. Like actual security technology these days is so incredible. You would need like supercomputers to be running for millions of years to actually like crack a password. What really happens is your password gets left out in the open somewhere. And so I'll give an example. Let's say you sign up for a Neopets account. I don't even know if that exists anymore, but you signed up for a Neopets account in 2004 when you were 16 years old or 12 years old or something, and you used your old trusty password, the same password that you use for your email and for your bank accounts and for your investment accounts because it's the one password you remember. And while your bank and your email providers are very secure, Neopets did a really bad job. I'm like throwing Neopets under the bus here. They did a really bad job securing your password, and they stored your password in what's called clear text. So instead of hashing it or encrypting it, they just saved it like in a Word document somewhere.
Yeah.
And then their founder leaves his password on a notepad somewhere, and someone finds it, logs in, and then downloads all these clear text passwords to Neopets, and
Yeah.
then posts it on the dark web somewhere. Then your Russian hacker doesn't need to go crack the code.
No.
He just tries these email password combinations on more important websites like banks and investment websites, right? And so the lesson there is don't reuse passwords ever,
Yeah.
and don't use some like I know what you're thinking. You're like, okay, well, I did like hockey is my main password, and hockey 123 is my
For
password.
sure.
Hockey exclamation point. It's all based like I wouldn't do that either. I'd have a really strong like when I say strong I mean long, like 12, 16 characters with uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, all some crazy long thing that makes no sense. And you might be saying, okay, how do I remember that? And the answer is you don't. You use a password manager. So a password manager is basically an app that saves all your passwords for you and can create these long, secure passwords. Two of the really popular ones are 1Password and Bitwarden. And basically, this is an app that has, in my example, or in my instance, hundreds of different accounts, or hundreds of different accounts that have the username and password combination for all those different sites. And that solves the problem of password reuse. And so we kind of went down this pathway and said, how do you make sure it's secure? So number one is don't reuse passwords, and that would be via a password manager. And then number two is always have two-factor authentication turned on, or sometimes called multi-factor authentication. So another way people get hacked, I gave that Neopets example. Another way people get hacked is through phishing. And so phishing, that's with a PH, you get an email from your boss that says something like, hey, Dave, if your name's Dave, or Whitney, if your name's Whitney. And Whitney, I don't think you have a boss, do you? You're like self-employed. So you'd be like very onto the scam immediately.
I'd be like,
If
who is this?
My boss.
How did they know?
I forgot I had a job. It's like that.
Oops.
It's that nightmare I had in college where I was in a class. I
Is
didn't
that
realize
why I was
in.
getting paychecks?
Yeah, I know that's been great. So these paychecks, but like you get an email from your boss at work, and it's like, hey Dave, please, there's a huge mistake in this file. Can you please look at this and fix it? And then there's a Google Drive link. And you click the Google Drive link and it has you log in, and you're like, oh God, my boss is pissed. It might have his real name, his real profile picture, blah, blah, blah. Then you like log into Google Drive, and then you get some error, and you're like, and then by the time you figured out what's going on, the hacker has your password, because what happened is that email wasn't from your boss. It was from some guy in the basement in Russia or whatever. He looked on LinkedIn. He figured out who your boss was. He made up a fake email account that looks like it's from your boss, and on a glance, it's got the same name and a similar domain or whatever. And then by the time you've figured it out, it's too late. You've already given your password. And so that's another way your password gets divulged. And then two-factor authentication is a way to save you, because then when he has your password and he goes to log into your real bank account, it's going to send you a text to your phone or ask you to log into your app and type in one of those 6-digit codes. He needs both the 6-digit code and the password to make it work. And so when you have multi-factor authentication turned on, it doesn't prevent it entirely. In fact, the hackers, usually these codes say, do not share with anyone, and don't type it into a sketchy phishing website. So you can divulge that code, but those codes are only good for like 30 seconds at a time. And so first of all, the hacker has to steal both things from you, which is much harder. And the hacker has to be able to go and use it within 30 seconds or whatever. And so it makes things way, way more secure.
That's a good tip. I like that too. And I think the password manager, especially for your financial information too, is so important. And a lot of people do use the same one because, like you said, they want to remember it and respect, but don't try to remember it in this case. That's not going to serve you well.
Yeah.
Is there any issues with using like the same ones that are the password managers on like Apple, where it shares between phones and computers?
No, yeah. Apple and I think Google both have like kind of built-in
That's right.
password managers. I've chosen not to. I just like mine to be independent for whatever reason. But the real key is don't have the password manager isn't good if you're reusing passwords, right?
Right.
And these that are dedicated password managers, they have like security checks where they say, hey, you have
Yeah.
similar passwords on these two sites. Go change one now. Or they can even watch for dumps of passwords and be like, yo, your
Yeah.
password was divulged over here. And so, their whole purpose of being is to keep you secure. And so they can actually give you some more tools to make sure that you're doing things right.
Yeah.
I know I hate that we even have to have this
I
conversation,
know.
but like I said, if you have an email and you have a bank, you probably already have this problem. Um, putting things in a folder isn't going to introduce the problem. You already need to be doing this stuff.
It's so true. Okay, I'm going to take us on a slight rabbit hole because now I'm curious. With your background in computer science and being interested in cybersecurity as well, do you use the face thing to unlock your phone or do you do a manual password?
I use the face thing. I
Do
mean,
you? I
yeah,
don't, but that's my true
really,
crime self kicking in.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think I've seen like twins unlock each other's phones, and like you
Yeah,
wonder if
some
like
crazy
could
stuff.
you do like what did I see? I saw a celebrity at like Madame Tussauds wax museum,
Oh,
and they
yeah.
unlocked the phone with his wax
Oh, dude.
with
So
his
that makes
wax.
me think AI too,
Yeah,
and how that interesting.
yeah. I don't know. I have a code too. I think I put in my letter to my family in the dead box. I'm like,
Yeah.
to get into my phone, you can hold up the phone to my dead face, or I put my code in there.
Nice. That does make sense too. Okay, we have covered a ton of ground, and hopefully people can see that yes, this is serious. It's also you can make it kind of lighthearted. It doesn't have to be quite as heavy, especially if you influx a little bit of humor into this as well. I think it could be an
Totally.
enjoyable experience, believe it or not. Is there anything we didn't touch on that you think might be relevant, or did we kind of cover most of the bases here?
Yeah, I'd say the big ones are writing your letter,
Hmm.
collecting your documents, and then setting a calendar reminder to email your
Yeah.
executor. Without that calendar reminder, again, it's only as good as it is up to date and known by your executor. That's really it.
I like it.
Nothing nothing here is really secret or monumentally complicated, but there is a kind of a template of all this stuff with instructions and videos on how to do this if you want.
Yeah.
It's $49, so it's not like a
It's a
crazy amount of
bargain.
money. And if you use coupon code Money Nerds, you'll get 20% off
Yeah.
too. So you'll
Oh,
get an even
sweet.
better deal. And you can totally do it on your own too, which would be 100% fine. But if you
Yeah.
want to support Money Nerds and you want a head start with all this stuff, you can go do it that way.
And
At
truly,
say the domain again.
themoneynerds.com/deadbox.
That's right.
So go check it out, guys. Jeremy, thank you again for hanging out. I appreciate you and your lack of sleep as well. I appreciate the solidarity there. So it's been really fun to hang out with you.
Yes, great thing is trading parenting tips and dead box tips. Nothing better than the cycle of life in one sentence right
Legit,
there.
like truly
Yeah,
full circle.
birth and death, and everything in between is we're just trying to figure out.
It's true. Thanks again, pal. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great seeing you.